Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Life Theories. It's been a while since we've come to join you, and we've got some big news today. Jay is back in Australia. Last time we got together, Jay was with me here in Canada. We had a nice little live one-on-one time. Got to know each other a lot better and got to go on some adventures, met some bears, and now Jay is back with with the kangaroos down in Melbourne, and yeah, he just wants to share a little bit about his adventures and all of the interesting stuff that he's discovered since being back, and all the insights that came to him while he was away. So why don't you take it away, Jay, and
Yeah,
let
thank you
us know
very
what's
much.
going on.
First of all, thank you very much for having me. It was a bloody pleasure. God, it was it. And I think the big thing is I'll do one thing that I've always said. Everyone says to me, "Oh, you're away and you're on holidays, and that's why you think Melbourne's a public toilet." I go, okay. Number one, listen to number one. I always tell people I'm a very good what they call a heel. Now, heel in wrestling is put the shits up people, right? On how to get a reaction. If you have a look at someone, if you watch pro wrestling, the bad guys, which is the heel, puts the shits up people to get a reaction. I'm
Mhm.
very good at that.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I just basically say, instead of saying, I really don't like it here, I'll go, it's a public toilet. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, because that's what we do in pro wrestling. That's what we do. Anyway, look, the big thing was what I just said with regards to be on holidays. Yes, you're on holidays. That's fine. But if you look at it spiritually and look at next level, which we do, is actually you analyze your life where it's at, and you want to get to that energy again, but with your work, with setting up whatever you want to do, set up a business, have a day to day life, the same energy as what you are in on a holiday, and you want to keep that there. So what you do is we came back and go, okay, what's not working in my life, and that's not working, but what can I change? What do I need to do? I turned 50, obviously, and meeting Bret Hart. There was a lot of this thing was a world tour for me. It was bloody hilarious. But I think like a lot of stuff, especially Sarah. I think the big thing. I loved staying with you and Willow. It was fantastic, and I was saying to everyone how easy it was as well, because we all ate the same thing. And you can see, I remember Sarah go, "You're the best guest." I go, "Why?" Because you just go along with what we want to eat. You're the only one. But
Yeah.
spiritually, I think it was a great journey spiritually to find out exactly where I was in life and what happened. And even if I went through Hurricane Beryl and bloody earthquakes and tsunamis and whatever else,
Yeah, you saw it
the
all.
big fella, bloody Cortez, said to me, "You had to be there. You had to be where you had to be, and that's it." And as a next level, and I met the great Solomon King. What a bloody honor it was to be at his place. But I had to be where I had to be exactly for my spiritual growth. And I wrote a
Yeah.
27-page diary.
That's great.
Sarah saw me writing as well.
Yeah.
27-page diary on on my growth on certain places, especially in Canada. I wrote a hell of a lot. But finding myself and making some changes, which I have, as soon as I've come down here, I go, do I really need to do this in my life anymore? And what do I need to do? And the big thing is looking at your fears and looking at what is holding you back. And it mainly is what programs are holding you back. Number one for me was
Yeah.
you do all this stuff, but you don't pull the trigger. Why? You always look at what's happening. And it's like doing some the great shadow work, or you actually look into the feeling of what you're doing. Okay, what happens? You go, okay, what's really going in? What's going on within your mind that's stopping you from doing things? Also, number two, the other one was the 51% rule, which I learned. Now, that to explain that, I did a video on it. Is I saw a guy. Well, I think it was. I was I was in Canada. I think I was in Calgary, and I was watching a video through Tony Robbins, and he got one of his people that was, I think Dean Grazioli had his one of his people he was coaching, and one guy came on. He goes, I had nothing, I had all this stuff, but I didn't want to pull the trigger. But basically, I took the 51% rule, which is basically if it's 51% ready to go, give it a bloody go and see what happens. Because you're not going to see you're not going to find out the next step if you don't, or you're not going to be able to step forward if you don't make that first step. And I know in my life I have people go, oh, you're really on the go and all this stuff. But when it comes down to it, I don't pull the trigger on a lot of things.
Yeah. I think a lot of us are dealing with that, right? Like they have things halfway, but they never take the leap to finish it. They never go
Mm.
the distance to like really see where that can take them because their fears take over, their subconscious beliefs take
And it comes
over,
down to
and they, they don't feel worthy of it. They don't feel strong enough, right?
it comes down to your subconscious programming. So a lot of mine was scarcity, fear, self-confidence, self-esteem, not having enough, um, fear of abandonment, not even abandonment. Sorry, fear of lack, fear of failure. Excuse me. So there was a lot of stuff in there that actually you go through that you don't understand it until you actually go through it. And the big thing was for me there, I think the big change was that bloody hurricane I was in. Excuse me. I asked to be in a. I think I've already spoken about this. I asked for a sweat lodge. I said, oh, I'm going to go and do a sweat lodge with the American Indians, right? I bloody got my own sweat lodge in Houston, where I could say for the first bloody time, honestly, the first time I actually spoke to my inner child, and that's not a word
Yeah.
I get. I didn't I don't, and I realized that a lot of people, number one, they go, how do you speak to them? How do you do all this work? You get all this information and got all this great stuff. How do you guys do it? And I realized as well when being a coach or a fucking coach, whatever you want to call it, a mentor, I've actually gone through it now and I can actually speak about it. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. How are you with your new cat? But I'll
Yeah,
tell you what,
things are
one thing
meant to
before,
be, don't force. Yeah, exactly. Just I think allowing changes right now where I'm living. Now it's fall. We had the summer. We got all this political crazy shit going on over here.
mm,
We have all these things, but I like what Solomon said in our last one we did, like the tides turning, and like there's a lot of changes. So it's like for me, just like letting go of kind of like the old remnants of like my old self. Like there's still little parts of me that's attached to some of my old ways of being, that are coming up more as I'm doing more healing work and like making changes in my life. And it's just a constant, like it's always evolving, right? It's like a spiral, it just keeps going. There's like deeper levels. So it's like, okay, this is something I was working on before. And maybe I even thought I resolved it, or it's like a different layer. It's like an onion. It's like now there's another layer of this
dirty
thing that I've been
onion.
trying to heal, or just something that I'm trying to work on. And it always goes real deep. And I'm like, oh, stop. I said I wanted to like work on this, but man, now you're hitting me with like way too much.
Doesn't
And
even
that's why
listen
I
to
say
you.
you have to go slow when you're making big changes at any level, whether it's, hey, me and Sarah both been talking about we're trying to do things to expand on a business level and stuff, you'll see like fears come up, old limiting beliefs, like want to be
Yep,
challenged, even old,
yep.
maybe trauma, emotions in whatever area. Like sometimes it could be like a fear of being seen. A lot of people have that, or just like some kind of attachment to like kind of waiting for the shoe to drop. Sometimes everything will be going good, and then like you think something crazy is going to happen, screw it up. So it's like it's working through a lot of that stuff. It's deep rooted stuff, and we go back to inner child. For me, it's always inner child too. It goes back somehow. This is going back to my inner child. Like almost
Yeah,
all
it's
a
great.
lot of it's awareness is key, right? We're all aware of these things, but it's just like, man, it'll be the same thing coming up on a way deeper level. I'm like, all right, I did good, I passed. I'm like, I give myself credit, and then it'll be like a bomb of something that like I'm like, oh, I wasn't thinking this, like. Or that's a whole nother thing I haven't even can of worms I haven't even opened. So I think it's just interesting, but being gentle with yourself while you're making all these changes. Yes, I did get a
That's the
cat
whole
too,
point.
that helped,
Yeah,
but doing any kind of small change in your routine, I think is like good right now. Switch things up. Like if you have something that's really not working for you or you've been frustrated with for a while or it's like not in alignment or it doesn't feel good, I'm learning to like tweak it. I'm like, all right, let me try it this way. So
Well, it's been
trying something
perfection.
new.
It's a perfection thing as well. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think a lot of things, like even getting up today and going, oh geez, I don't have everything. I go, bugger it. All right, hat on, glasses on. Get the
yeah,
mic out. Let's just do it. You know what I mean? There's because we live in a world of perfection. If you look at people, go, if I don't do it this way, I won't get views and all that stuff. We got
yes, yeah,
it's a it. Look, we live in a fucked up society in a lot of ways, but
Yeah.
I call the public toilet and all this shit. But there's a lot of diamonds within
Your
the
mastery.
thing was with the public toilet comments and all this shit, right? What else I do, I've realised that people don't frigging listen because I
You
always go,
know,
I bloody I hate human beings, but they don't. They go, oh yeah, I hate humans. You're a bloody asshole. All this shit, right? I go, could you just shut up and listen for a minute? I'm finished. And they go, yeah. Well, get your head out of your ass anyway. So
huh.
I said, I bloody hate human beings. And I go, but once you find some diamonds in the rough, you keep them and keep them close. Oh, really? Oh, that's what happens when you listen, you dickheads. Anyway, but yeah. But what about you, love? What about I love haircut?
since you left, it's been a doozy. We each had a Akashic Records reading to go through our money blockages, and it turns out we had like a big karmic tie to each other
Mm,
that was like keeping us in poverty loops and just really like overly like in attachment as opposed to keeping us in friendship. So now that we both had I had my session with this Akashic Records reader. Her name's Marina. She's the soul alchemist. Totally recommend her. She's great. She's from the UK. Um, she did a session on me. It ended up being very tied to like my money blocks ended up being very tied to like what's happening right now with Willer. Turns out a whole bunch of stuff that happened to us in our past was like recurring um, almost to a T to what happened 4 lifetimes ago for us. And we cleared all of the contracts and everything between he and I on my end, and then he went and did a session with her shortly after. And ever since then, we've basically just like been. It's almost like we're rebuilding our friendship, and we are looking at our friendship from a point of view of real, genuine connection as opposed to attachment. And because what we had before was just attachment. We very much cared for the friendship and for each other, but there was a lot of really negative, dense chords and like old promises and contracts that we had made and kept with each other. And we were just living out this same loop, this same story, and it wasn't healthy for either one of us. And since clearing that, we've both been like opening ourselves up to you know moving in a different way. We're looking at our financial responsibilities a little bit differently now. We're looking at like how we interact with each other differently. We're looking at the way we communicate differently as well. I've started like stepping into my power a little bit more and taking a little bit more control of my business and not letting um, his blockages or opinions change what I feel is right for me. And that's something that I was doing before. I would get really excited about something and then he'd have something to say about it and he'd project his blockages onto me and it would stop me. But ever since we both had this clearing, I'm noticing that I'm able to like remove myself a little bit more and like see that see when it's just a projection of his own fears and when he's actually like saying this to look out for me. So it's been really good. It's been really eye opening and life changing for both of us to like have that clearing done because we're no longer um, living out a friendship that's like tied to karmic patterns
yeah.
and karmic loops. We're actually like building a real strong, legitimate connection now, which is it's taking some adjustment phase and adjustment period, but we're doing really well with it. And just in a few short weeks, you know, we're seeing a lot of really positive changes from that.
Right.
And Jay, what I wanted to say too, it came up while you were talking about how you keep saying it's better somewhere else. It's better somewhere else. And everyone's like, oh, well, you're just saying that because you were on vacation. I had the same thing. I grew up on the other side of Canada in Ottawa, and a part of me always felt like I just felt like shit all the time. And I didn't realize it. Like when I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to have faith in myself. I'm going to have faith in the process, and I'm going to just go and do this because it feels right for me at this time. And I left everything. I was even in fashion school. I left in the middle of like a 2 year course. I left after the first year, and I just left everything, all my friends, my apartment, my schooling, and I moved out to Vancouver. And the instant that plane landed, when I knew this is my home now, it was like a massive weight lifted off my shoulders. And I felt like I even said out loud, and I started crying on the plane. Thankfully, there was no one in the seats beside me. I would have looked mad, but I'm just crying and laughing. And I was like, I'm fucking home. I'm home. And it was because my soul always knew that's where I was born, but that's not my home. That's not, you know, and people are like, oh, well, you can't forget your hometown. It's like, it's not like I've forgotten it. I do have roots there still, but I didn't belong there. My
Yeah.
soul knew there was something more for me elsewhere.
Yeah.
This is the
And
big thing. That's exactly right.
yeah, and sometimes you don't necessarily know until you go on a big journey like
Yeah.
you've just had, that that's what's making you feel so on the inside and like so low, and like, you know, what's creating this like this pattern of blockages within you. It's because you're actually not where your soul is meant to
Mm.
carry out the rest of its time,
Yeah.
right? So
The two
going on these
things.
journeys helps you like to see that and feel like, oh, this is where I feel
Learn through
good.
contrast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like,
It's
for
just,
example, if I go away, right? If I went away, like I've always said, Perth's going to be the place, Freo is the place, but the energy between Freo and Vancouver and maybe Canada in general is exactly the same. Like I went to Dallas, mate, I could party in Dallas all the time, but I wouldn't live there in a pink fit. I went to Japan,
yeah.
great place, wouldn't live there in a pink fit, right? And the way I am, I'm very tunneled with everything. So, but I felt, and I've always had the thing in Canada. Now, I got a question for both of you to answer. How we do all this work? Because I had a question. I had actually a bit of a chat to someone who's spiritual, but they go, you do all this, you go all this stuff. How much is enough before you actually make the move? And I go, my answer to that is like, yeah, doing the Karcher record reads, this, that, this, that.
51%.
And that's what, well, that's pretty much where I went to. I said, okay, that's fair. It's a case of, I think, and as Cortez said, you got to be where you are right at the time, and you'll be put into position to strengthen you to when that big change comes up. Say, for example, the hurricane came up, right? That was a major event because I got into that sweat box, the sweat lodge. So I look back on it, mate, I regressed to my old self and go, oh my God, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be here. I should be home. I should be back there just sitting in my bed, all this stuff, right? I did regress for about 5 minutes. Then I just laid down and gone, right, calm down, went down. That's when I started talking to the inner child. So I think it's basically like having the life PhD for me. And that when is enough? Yeah, well, you got to start making some moves as well. So when you've got to do these big steps, you know what I mean? So you got to put yourself into a situation where you put these skills that you've been doing, all this information that you've got into practice. What do you reckon?
Yeah. Yeah, I felt the same way, right? It was for me, it was like I could have stayed. I could have, you know, finished my schooling. I could have done a lot of things in Ottawa still. But for me, enough was enough. It felt like the opportunities just were aligned just enough for me to be like, I'm going to do this. I There was something inside of me that kept saying, it's time, it's time, it's time. Like the longer you stay, the more like I just got this feeling like the longer I stay here, the more it's actually going to do me harm than good.
Yeah.
And I just decided to like listen to that inner voice that just kept saying like, let's get out of here, let's get out of here, let's get out of here.
Yep. I've had that.
And
Yeah.
you know, some people have that, and it's just about knowing when it's time to listen. And like usually your inner voice is there for a reason. And if it keeps saying the same thing and repeating the same thing enough times, eventually you'll pick up and listen. Um, and I've noticed that there's been times where I haven't picked up and listened, and shit just gets weirder and weirder and more uncomfortable until it's
Or
literally
pressure. Yeah.
squeezes you
Yeah.
out. Like it feels like a pressure, like you're being squeezed out.
Yeah.
And usually by that point, um, it's a little bit more difficult because now there's all this pressure around it, and you've built up all of these circumstances behind you that can sometimes make it harder to go. So like if you're at a place where it feels ease and you're hearing that voice, like just listen, like, and open yourself up to trusting that voice because it's there for a fucking reason.
Yeah.
And if it's saying it loud enough or enough times, like it's time to start listening to it,
I think
whether
with the case
that's
of what I think with the case of
leaving
what you
your
said,
job, leaving your
Yep.
school,
yeah,
leaving a relationship, getting a new home, moving to a new country, whatever it is. It could be as simple as like, oh, I gotta get rid of these old clothes that have been sitting here forever. You know, it could be something as little as letting something
simple
like
as
that
that.
go,
Yeah,
or it could be something as big as I'm going to move to another country. Whatever the voice in your head is saying, like it's time, it's time, it's time, you got to trust that voice and listen to it.
I think with where I was, I look back on it now. Everything happened in the perfect time because going back 5 years when I had the spiritual awakening or the bloody, the breakdown, or whatever you want to call it. I look back before that. Would I have? I would. It wouldn't have worked if I had. If I wouldn't have. Nothing now would have worked back then. Nothing, because I
Yeah,
wasn't there. I had to go through. I had to go through.
yeah.
And that's pretty much it. What do you think, Di? What do you reckon? I mean, you do a lot. You've just transformed your life as far as I'm concerned with all your from where we met, where you were, but look what you're doing now, and coaching people or putting out all those positive videos, and how you've changed your life. What do you reckon? I'm going in interview mode now.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to what both of y'all said. When it's time to go, you're gonna get so much pressure like that it's gonna be uncomfortable. I've had that happen when it was time for me to go into rehab, like that timing when I went there, I got in for free. I was like holistic rehab for like 4 months, and it became so uncomfortable to keep doing the life. So I was doing like I lost a job, I lost a relationship, I lost like my parents about to kick me out. I had nowhere to go, so I like was kind of trying to stay back home, and then it just got really bad. It got so uncomfortable, and then anytime I would like relapse, it became more and more like it got worse and worse, and really bad stuff started happening. So it was like, yo, bitch, are you going or not? Like the window of opportunity was there, and if I didn't go, if I didn't decide to stop exactly when I did, like I might have not gotten into that program. And the one thing I liked about that place, it was like a holistic one. It was very different than a lot of the other places, and I got in for free. Like it was just so like
It was
divinely
supposed to happen that way.
That's great.
intervention. But it's not just that. I mean, I've had that happen with relationships. When it was time for me to move from where I was just at, I felt so
Mhm.
uncomfortable there because it became toxic. I think I learned what I had to learn, but also part of it was setting a boundary and removing myself from that situation so I could heal more, because I couldn't heal and improve in that environment I was just in before I moved here even. So that's the example. Anytime there's some big thing coming up, like anytime I went back and forth in the past, whatever, I might go back and forth with my mind, like my mind's preparing to make the change because it knows it's like, oh, I gotta do this soon. Am I willing to let go of these other things attached to my old self? And then when it's time, there could be an exact timing of when something needs to happen for maybe you to meet a certain person to learn this, or for me it was getting into a program, or it could be a career opportunity, right? Maybe something, even for us now, it could be something with our content. It could be something because we're putting ourselves out there more. You're trying to grow your business, and Jay's traveling, like Sarah's expanding more. It's like there could be things that are coming up in like other ways, but that's why I think it's really good for us to be open to different opportunities and ways of doing things, because it might not look like what you think it's going to look like. The opportunity, the conversation, you never know. Like they always say with manifestation, it's like a bridge of events that happen. They go a little bit too crazy into that. If you go into manifestation world on YouTube, they go like kind of out there, but
Yeah.
and some people get really hooked on that and like obsessive with that, can get kind of out there. But it's like, but there usually is like
Yeah.
a bridge of incidents like this, like even how we met. We were supposed to do life theories, how we met. It was the perfect timing. We were in different stages of our lives, but we
Yeah.
all got the call for the group, right? We knew we were supposed to join that damn group. I mean, all of us were still friends to this day. Like
Or
that's a
how
perfect
about
example.
Yeah.
how long
Something
was it
told
till I
me
said
to
I was
go
going to
on
go and
Facebook
meet?
that day. Yeah.
How long was it? When did I say I'm going to go? Oh, we'll have to go and all meet, and suddenly, that time comes, and I've got on a plane and pretty much met all of you except for Di, which will happen very soon. But it. Look, there's so much work you can do. You can go to astrologers, you can go to Akashic record readers and all this stuff, but it will be timing for you to do it. But it's what you do with it and your understanding of it. Don't just do it. I mean, you can do it if you feel like you need to do it. Don't get me wrong, but it's what you do afterwards. And don't if you ignore what's going on and you ignore your changes and your growth because you're scared or whatever. I know this is coming from personal experience,
Yeah.
and just accept what's happening and going in your head. Okay, what's going on here? What's going on here? And listen to your inner self. You're halfway there.
It's
Yeah.
being aware and also listening to your body. I mean, Sarah, we've even gone through exercise where you're having your body tell you if it's a yes or a no. I use like a pendulum, but you know, I'm still relying on myself. It just you have to follow your own intuition. It's not when someone else wanted it. No one could tell me when it was time to do all these changes I needed to do. Like, and no
Yeah.
one can still tell me now. Like, I mean, I can listen to other people's opinions. I do like to listen to people's perspectives, but then I at the end of the day, it's my own intuition. I'm not going to make this decision just because this person thinks I should, or I feel pressured from these people. It's like
Yeah.
it's like your own inner guy. Like you have your intuition for a reason, you know. There's a timing, like, but if you have too many distractions or trying to keep too busy, sometimes you don't get the signal. You're off, or we
Yeah.
kind of there's a lot of ways we can get very out of alignment, you know, and so sometimes you can't hear the signal, like it's being transmitted to you, but it's like you're not focused
Yeah.
on the right things, or you're focused on something else, like that's kind of bringing you down, and yeah, just like you're not in alignment. So you want to do what you can to get in alignment is what I say, you know.